Mushoku Tensei is a difficult series to recommend. On one hand, it has some of the most gorgeous production I've ever seen in a fantasy TV anime. The music is impeccable. It is filled to the brim with so much care and passion by its staff. And it tells a story that I think is truly worth telling. On the other, there's Rudeus. Our main lead is abhorrent. Rudeus is scum. He isn't a serial killer, a genocidal maniac, or evil, but he's so unlikable that to many of the series' detractors, the show's problems would instantly be fixed by the removal of Rudeus Greyrat. To many people, he is the worst part of Mushoku Tensei, and I can't really fault anyone who can't stomach the series because of him. He isn't meant to be a likable protagonist. And yet, despite all of that, despite his many faults, his misdeeds, and his errors, when I think of Rudeus Greyrat, I think of a single word: inspiring. When I consume media, most of the characters I end up gravitating towards aren't ones that I end up personally relating to. There are exceptions, of course. Yaguchi Yataro from Blue Period is someone I hold near and dear to my heart. But the characters I usually end up adoring are the ones who have something I don't. Some special trait they possess that I strive to one day gain myself. But Rudeus is a terrible person. He isn't meant to be a role model in the traditional sense. However, that doesn't mean I won't root for him through every step he takes on his path towards self-improvement. I can acknowledge his faults while acknowledging his strengths. In fact, I think his imperfectness is to the series' benefit. What happens when you take a terrible human being with a desire to do better a second chance? It would be so easy for Rudeus to slack off, to do the bare minimum and live out his peaceful days in Bueno Village, to let his guard down and remain stagnant. But he never does that. The day Rudeus learns about magic, he does everything he can to learn it. He trains every single day until his body passes out from the fatigue. In his later years, he does that while simultaneously training swordsmanship with Paul. How many of us would actually be as dedicated as him? Not many, I imagine. And as someone who works out on a regular basis, I know that keeping that consistency can be a struggle sometimes. Not everyone would be able to achieve what Rudeus did if they were put in the same situation as him. But Rudeus isn't some perfect ideal of what a human being should look like. He is constantly motivated by his fear of remaining stagnant, constantly doubts his own ability, and is the aforementioned terrible person that I said he was. And yet, he is capable of at least this much. This flawed, difficult to like, scummy person still has the ability to change himself for the better. If he can do it, why can't you? Why can't I? What's stopping any of us from putting in just as much work? Rudeus isn't a genius, or a hero, or a saint. He's a person, and an immensely flawed one at that. But everyone, no matter who, is capable of change. And I think the world would be a deeply sadder place if people stopped believing in that. My father wasn't the best role model while he was growing up. He was a kind person. I think I can believe that. But it was buried under a lot of complicated feelings that would express themselves in some unsavory ways. I know that if I met his younger self now, without knowing it was him, I wouldn't want anything to have to do with him. Maybe I'd even hate him. But the only reason I even know about any of this is because he told me about all those things. He never hid that side of himself. He's changed. There are parts of him now that give me glimpses of the person he used to be, but they aren't at the forefront. It's been decades since that point in his life, and the man I know today isn't anything like the man he used to be. That person is a stranger to me. But I know so much about him because the father that I do know doesn't want me repeating those mistakes. My father isn't a genius, or a hero, or a saint. He's a person, and an immensely flawed one at that. And despite his many faults, his misdeeds, and his errors, I love him. It's for the people like this that Mushoku Tensei is dedicated to. It screams to its audience, look! People can change. Give them a chance. Can't you see how much they've grown? And that statement is as much about the characters in the series as it is about the people in your own life. And it makes you wish you could do the same. Mushoku Tensei is a difficult series to recommend, but it's a story that I love. It has some of the most gorgeous production I've ever seen in a fantasy TV anime. The music is impeccable. It's filled to the brim with so much care and passion by its staff. And it tells a story that I think is truly worth telling. And it has Rudeus, someone who, despite his many faults, his misdeeds, and his errors, makes me want to get off my ass and be something more, because Rudeus Greyrat is inspiring.